Might not seem super obvious at first why, the gay agenda is attached to the communist agenda, but you have to understand that basically it is all a satanic war against the divine structure, the natural order of this universe, right? They are trying to overturn every natural archetype and every natural form in the existent world so that they can impose their new structure, which they think is superior, but it's actually inferior in every way. Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we're talking about Pride Month, right? It's been an ongoing staple of American society for many years now. Pretty much, I remember 2006 as being the year when this whole thing really started in earnest politically. Obviously, there's been, a gay rights movement in America for some time before that, since the 60s and 70s. But as far as the political gay thing, right, 2006 was a bunch of states, I remember during the Bush years, and it was a big thing, a big push to eliminate gay marriage by defining marriage as between a man and a woman. And back then, when I was in high school, I thought that seemed like an arbitrary religious notion. I thought it was silly that the government would be taking time and resources to do things like define marriage as between a man and a woman. And I figured, let's just let people do what they want to do. Let's just let them get married, right? They're just normal people and they just want to get married, right? They're just the same as anybody else. So, homosexuality is pretty much the same thing as heterosexuality. They're morally equal and functionally equal, and there seems to have been an actual very slippery slope that has taken place between now and then. I think that that has ceased to be a fallacy and has become an actual documentable fact. As many are reporting, and I have as well, the absolute insane shift to the far left by those who call themselves liberal in this country, the white Democrats and blue teamers. It's while the red team and the Republicans have mainly, stayed in the same lane and advocated the same thing for years on years, the left has gone from, hey, they just want to get married, we believe in capitalism too, we're all trying to, protect the border and protect our families, and, we agree on all these things. Now they're like, abolish the patriarchy, eliminate capitalism, let all the illegal immigrants in and give them all infinite levels of state services, including full health insurance. And it's like so bizarre, because this is a platform that, like, if you have even 2 functioning brain cells left, you like, none of this makes any sense. There's no way that any of this is rational, which is why the original social democrats, the original socialists and immigration activists in America, they saw that basically either you have state, you have the welfare state, right? They were advocating for socialism, and they recognized that you have to limit the amount of people that are receiving those services. It can't be unlimited, right? So basically you've got to limit one or the other. Either you have a purely anarcho-capitalist libertarian society and give out no welfare and just let everybody earn their way by the sweat of their brow, and basically how sharp they are and how much they can just get by in the capitalist society and prove their worth in the capitalist system. But the full-on shift towards socialism, I don't know, I think it seems to be affiliated with the gay movement. I think it's all just basically this feels over reals mentality of just, it doesn't matter what facts or data say, it doesn't matter what scientific reality is, it matters what feels right. And I think that is really the attitude. Again, it's a splitting of the brain into those who are left brain dominant and those who are right brain dominant. Again, I think think this is all tied into the vaccine injury that they're, enforcing on the mass population through the mandatory vaccination laws. It's you force one hemisphere to become dominant when you create inflammation in the brain. It's basically like you're squeezing the brain, and so people they pick a side. They in order to get by, you choose. You'll use one hand over the other, but you got to use one of them. You can't just use no hands, or you're you're functionally useless. And in the same way with the brain, we choose a dominant hand, right? For me, it's always been left brain, and I've learned how to access my right brain through different techniques and different entheogenic substances and whatnot. But of course, there's the front door and the back door into the pineal gland. There's meditation and fasting, and that's the front door, right? And then there's a back door, which is things like mushrooms and LSD and whatnot. And people have taken a lot of drugs like LSD and ecstasy and the opiates and all these other things, and people have stayed, and including cannabis. I will admit fault. I don't blame any natural substance for its effect on the human race. I blame people and their moral agency for how they use the substances. With regard to the organic substances, there are things like methamphetamine, which I do not grant quarter. It's not a natural substance. Yes, ephedra, is a natural plant, but methamphetamine is not a natural substance, right? So there's a legitimate moral argument for controlling chemical substances, or at least labeling them properly and controlling their output, just like we regulate, hazardous chemicals. I think of, now that I've gone from being an anarchist to a conservative, working in a function of compliance for my job, I have to admit that there are some rules that do make sense, and that literally you can't have a society without rules of some kind. The rules have to exist. They have to make sense. They have to be based on something real that everybody can kind of access and participate in. And otherwise, it's just an arbitrary law system, like most of the law throughout human history has been. And if Western society, Western civilization has contributed anything distilled down to one thing, it's basically that of the law as an accessible thing to the people and to more and more people who get to participate in it. And in participating in that civilization, they are able to refine their own internal instincts and, become the higher man, and basically transmute the animal instinct and, learn how to control your instinct to just tear somebody's jugular out, and learn how to calm yourself down and just say, okay, I'll be happier and I'll be able to get my way in far more ways than this if I just don't tear his jugular out right now, but I just play it cool and I go back to my production and I follow this other route, and whether it's lawsuits or basically just out competing someone or simply just ignoring them and living happy and just getting the ultimate revenge through that way of just ignoring those who antagonize you and just living happy. I think that should be the ultimate form of revenge. We should all be striving for ultimately, no matter who we might have antagonism toward. But anyway, I'm just rambling. I'm going to be reading an article at the end of this. I have to ramble because society is just, the moniker clown world is so perfect. Everything is so ridiculous, and the Democratic debates are the most perfect example of that. Tulsi Gabbard is the, rare exception to this. I will say that if Trump, if Trump's cabinet convinces him to basically invade Iran or Venezuela, which I don't think will happen, but if it happens, just as a caveat, I could see myself, basically throwing support behind Tulsi Gabbard. I don't agree with her on a lot of things, but that's kind of the fail-safe. Trump has to know that he will not win the election if he goes forward with an actual war, and so he acted very wisely to pull the operation back and not kill the supposed 150 Iranians. He's very good with his theatrics at appeasing the neocons and going just far enough to get them frothing at the mouth, enough that the rest of the country sees them with their bulging eyeballs and their pulsing blood veins, and looks at them and says, "Oh my God, are these the people that are leading us to war? Like these, these short little Hebrews that basically have no stake in the battle whatsoever, and just want to create new real estate developments in 20 years for Israel?" I don't think so, and I think most of the country agrees with that, left and right, which is very good to see. Again, we're not going back in the box. Nobody's been lulled to sleep. Not even the QAnon people. It's not that the QAnon people aren't necessarily afraid of a war with Iran. It's just that they believe that there's a deeper plan, and that whatever happens, basically is not going to be the ultimate World War III scenario. And I think that faith isn't necessarily misplaced. I think that, I'm not going to get bent out of shape about a potential Iranian war, because why would I? It's he's already basically played chicken with North Korea, and that's now turned out to be a great situation, it looks like. I mean, even if things get, salty from here, it's on a very good trajectory. And of course, it's all a sideshow to the trade talks between Trump and Xi, the U.S. and China, which is the main theater for the world economy and everything pretty much right now. How that is resolved will determine many, many things, and we'll see a lot other pieces on the chessboard start moving politically as soon as the trade talks are figured out. But like Trump said, no rush, because literally the tariff game is working. All the free trade economists were totally wrong. Yes, the United States eats an amount of those tariffs, but the whole point of the dependency of the other economies upon the United States is that they end up eating most of the tariff cost in the interest of saving the contract, of saving the business with their U.S. clients, right? So it was a genius move. It still is a genius move. It provides the federal state with, tax money more from, the foreign countries than from the citizens. And if they're all benefiting from the U.S. economy, then it makes sense. Trump's been saying this shit for years. I mean, even the people who hate him, you got to give him credit for consistency. He has been saying that since the 80s, when Oprah herself was telling Trump that she'd wish he'd run. Again, he was a Democrat before he decided to run as a Republican. We were all Democrats, I suppose, at one point, back when we thought it made sense. And then we realized they're all a bunch of raving communists who basically have shifted so far into right brain dominance that they don't believe in empirical reality anymore. And they believe that they can just impose a structure on things because it's all a social construct to begin with. This is their logic, for real. I used to be a communist. I know who they think. On that note, I will be debating a person who will defend the socialist position. I hesitate to call him a socialist. I don't know if he'd self-ascribe as a socialist. He doesn't ascribe as a Marxist, but he ascribes as a socialist. I'm going to try and figure out how to make it live stream. It'll be this Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to try and put a reminder out, but here's a heads up to all of you that this should be entertaining. I don't know if I've ever made any content of formal, long-form debate of capitalism versus socialism. This is what I hoped the 2016 election would be. Seriously, I remember making videos 3 years ago about Trump and Bernie, and I was like, I would love it if it came down to Trump versus Bernie. Then we could have a national debate for real, now in the context of social media, of capitalism versus socialism. I mean, we've already been having that debate, but the presidential format of the head-to-head, competition would put that in such a focus that, maybe we could resolve the Marxist question more totally. Not that defeating the Soviet Union was testament enough, but as we know, cultural Marxism isn't dependent on facts. It doesn't rely on anything material to prove that it's correct. It just relies on feelings of, people should be equal, therefore they are equal. Like, that's seriously how it goes. It just sounds nice. We don't want to offend black people, therefore all people are equal. Everybody, every single person, all of the 7 billion people have the same IQ. They all have they all make the same amount of money. They're all the same heights. They all have the same skin color, and they all should love communism, theoretically. That's how it works in theory. It doesn't work in reality. Not only does it not work, but people don't even want it, and that's why they have have to lie to people to get them to buy it, because it's bullshit, and it's not based on reality. It's based on lies. It is the kingdom of lies, Satan's kingdom of lies, because as we know from the Bible, in the temptation of Jesus in the desert, Satan offered all of the kingdoms of the world to Jesus, said, I will give you all the worldly power, I will deliver all the kingdoms to you. I don't know the exact quote, I'm paraphrasing, but and Jesus is like, I'm going to continue fasting up here in the desert and communing with the holy force of the cosmos, and no, I don't want all the kings of the world. But the point is, Satan would not have offered something he couldn't give, right? He had all the kings of the world in his pocket, and to this day he does, with the exception of, a few key populist rulers who have been put into power, over the last few years, including Trump, Salvini in Italy, Nigel Farage in the UK, who knows, maybe he'll even be Prime Minister of the UK. That would be excellent, right? Bolsonaro, despite the 39 kilograms of cocaine just found in his, I guess one of his Praetorian Guard, one of his military guys, one of his plane was caught on the way to the G20 meeting. Hey, you gotta bring your own. If it's BYOC, bring your own coke to the G20 meeting, right? I haven't really done a political rambling video for a while, but I actually was going to do this Pride video earlier in the month, because the Carlos Maza thing and the Vox Apocalypse, and he's just this gay socialist, and he's calling for censorship against the whole internet, because Steven Crowder, who might even be gay himself, right, is basically calls him a lisping queer, which he is a lisping queer. He self-ascribes as a queer, and he has a lisp. I believe he has a lisp. It sounds like he has a lisp. Maybe he's just that gay. But anyway, he's just like this watchdog communist, just gay, just a sentinel of the mainstream media. As we know, Vox is basically, owned, I think, in major part by NBC. And so basically he's a sentinel of the mainstream media, going out and saying, I'm offended because I'm queer and he called me a queer. And so ban him. He can't be able to make money, and no one affiliated with him can be on the internet. And even people who had nothing to do with Steven Crowder are now getting banned. And for people like our channel, not that we're banned, it's not that we're demonetized, not that would matter at all, but that we just don't get recommended, and the material doesn't go any farther than those who have already seen it. And that's a shame, because, again, it's like, much love to all you guys, but it's like, ideally we'd like the message to spread. So again, reminder to just, if you like any part of this message, even 10%, just click the like button, leave a comment, even if you got nothing else to say, just say hello, just say unimportant comment, just leave an emoji, I don't care, just help us boost up the algorithm, share it, and, because the clown world, as mentioned in the last video, is entering the end game, and this Pride Month is just almost like the perfect snapshot of the duality that has just percolated at this point. That I don't think you can call yourself oppressed when you have literally every major corporation in the world on your side and showing your flag on their corporate logo, right? I don't think you get to be oppressed when you have the entire banking syndicate and all of Fortune 500 companies basically singing your praises. Nope. You're not oppressed. You are now basically a super protected class. You're a new nobles, right? As some people are calling them. Basically people who can, attack others and make fun of others and, use hate speech and throw bile and vitriol and call for violence, and they don't get called out or any adverse action at all. And then like a conservative, or a relative truth speaker will say something, that's factually grounded and, mild by comparison to what the left throws out, and they get banned for hate speech. It's silly. But again, I'm optimistic that the new platforms are being created at Mach 12 evolve right now, and we will see in the next few months the ascendance of some very, very major players. Voice, I had the same day that I made my last video, Dan Larimer and the Block One team announced Voice, which is going to be a new blockchain-based social media on the EOS blockchain, and I think that has the potential to be a major contender. Supposedly, Block One dropped $30 million just on the domain voice.com. So, and they are pretty well capitalized from the EOS, token distribution. So there's many good things coming down the pipeline, and we will have many things up and running by the 2020 election. So again, their censorship will not only have revealed their draconian evil nature to all the people in the middle who were just, thinking, hey, maybe they're still just conspiracy theorists. They said, oh shit, no, now the conspiracy theorists we see were right all along. Just like I'm seeing that the people who opposed gay marriage were right all along. Basically they were right. Marriage is between a man and a woman. You can call it a civil union or a whatever social contract, I don't give a damn. But marriage is a sacred bond between a man and a woman, not just because they love each other, but because they intend to have a lifelong union which will result in the production of new human beings and children, which a gay marriage by definition cannot. Yes, they can adopt kids, and I'd be fine with the states getting to decide whether or not LGBT social unions are allowed to adopt kids. I think there's legitimate arguments on both sides, and that would be a debate I'd be interested in having just for scholarly academic reasons, because I'm not sure which side I really follow on that one. Is it worse to have a kid in a LGBT home with two parents, whether they be of the same sex or whatnot, or is it better to have them be in a foster home, which is not a very good situation. So there's legitimate arguments on both sides as far as I can see, and I would under the 10th Amendment, under the Constitution, grant that question to the states to decide. It's not even a federal question to decide, just like abortion is not a federal question to decide. I'm just kind of running through all my premises of why the American system of capitalism is innately superior to all forms of socialism, and if in preparation for the debate, and I'm open to listening to the idea of socialism in a new deconstructed form of a network of social services, which again I think the government will be provided by the blockchain. I think specifically the EOS blockchain is going to be able to deliver governance structures that are decentralized, that will be able to be implemented by organizations, public and private, to record elections, to make decisions, to serve as a ledger and a journal of decisions and code, for everything, not just for computer programs, for people and systems. I mean, there's a reason they call the law regulations, they call it the code, right? It is literally the code that society is running on. And, we can't have society with no code, right? The anarchists who know what they're talking about are not advocating for no code. The communists might be advocating for no code, but we are not advocating for that. We are advocating for, a sort of decentralized private code societies making the code, on their own terms. And that's, again, what the American system was founded on, home rule, emerged out of the Enlightenment, and, basically very heavily influenced by English and Celtic philosophy. The Celts came over to this part of the world, and they had just fought an entire war against England for their own sovereignty, and it was very, very well ingrained in their culture of home rule, of local environs and communities getting to decide, and that being the primary source of power. And basically just having a federalized structure so that we can fight against common enemies and coordinate on issues that require that level of coordination. And again, it might not seem super obvious at first why, the gay agenda is attached to the communist agenda, but you have to understand that basically it is all a satanic war against the divine structure, the natural order of this universe, right? They are trying to overturn every natural archetype and every natural form in the existent world so that they can impose their new structure, which they think is superior, but it's actually inferior in every way. right? Whether it's, overturning God. They overturn God and get people to be atheists, so people will believe in the government as the ultimate power, and there's no transcendent power beyond just the collective, material force of human beings, right? You got to overturn the family. The family doesn't exist, right? You don't need to have kids. You don't need to find a lasting partner to, create kids with. You don't need to even, be heterosexual at all. You don't need to, you don't need to follow anything. You can be just a furry and wear a dog costume and, pretend that you're an inanimate object or a video game character, right? The destruction of identity formation itself, right? And again, this is where the ritual abuse of children is a major part of this. They have to psychically destroy people so that they have a whole bunch of free radicals walking around in the greater organism, right? Just like in the body, the free radicals walk around and they just basically destroy cells that they encounter, right? And so when you harm a human being at a young age, it creates a lasting trauma, and they go forth and basically just replicate that trauma onto all the people that they encounter. And this is, I think, there may be some genetic, component to being gay or lesbian or whatnot. Obviously, for those who are hermaphrodites, there's a, genetic component in having both, reproductive organs and whatnot. But there's the amount of people statistically that are claiming to be LGBT today, I think, is way, way, way above what can be naturally construed from genetic, origins. There's basically about 2% of people that, are naturally gay in historical terms. And now we're at a point where like 10% of millennials are reporting that they're one of the LGBTQ, PIA, whatever, And now they're at the point where literally pedophilia and zoophilia, otherwise known as bestiality, are legitimately being argued for by crazy people on the internet. And, yes, it's not a whole lot of people, but again, it's the breaking down of all structures to the point where there's just nothing but pure degeneracy, and Satan rules the earth. That's essentially what they're looking for. They want, everything broken down. And they don't have any real reason for it. Again, it's nihilism. It's just basically emotional damage replicating emotional damage. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. They'll give pseudo-philosophical and pseudo-logical reasons for some of their positions, but none of them actually make sense. And so again, I'm looking forward to this debate on Sunday, potentially hearing some arguments that may even make sense, might even resonate with some things that I believe in. I'm open to being convinced. My mind is not closed, but at the same time, I've already thought well and good about socialism, and I already know mathematically, emotionally, philosophically, scientifically, and all the other illies why it is a defunct philosophy that can yield nothing but pain and suffering. But again, we will need ways to distribute services in the future. There will be public and private services, and I think all of them can benefit from a governance structure that is radically decentralized. And I think that blockchain and the internet, these are the tools that we have been given and we have created to solve these problems. And so it's a very interesting time. It's very exciting. Again, remember, in all the drama and all the chaos, bad things are not the worst thing that can happen to us. Nothing is the worst thing that can happen to us. Nothing is worse than being bored. Nothing worse is being boring, right? It's better to have the ups and the downs and have the story afterward. And, even when nothing's happening after that, you can sit content in the stories that you have and all the crazy shit that has gone down. And that's what it is. We're on the verge of the Second American Renaissance, and this is basically the dark before the dawn, and the last gasp of cultural Marxism, and basically the reign of straight up, criminal, communist gangsters in positions of power, just using their cartel grip on the people and the ignorance of the people, to basically keep them in mental chains. And just remember that that's where the battle is being fought, not in the streets, despite the Antifa versus the Nazis narrative. The battle is being fought, as always, in the minds of the people. And if you can wake up yourself, and if you can just become educated and start sharing that knowledge, you're the opposite of a free radical. You're a white blood cell. What do they call them? A killer cell, right? Get a CCW, then you'll be a killer cell. Or become a police officer. Not to say that a CCW gives you the right to kill. I don't mean to be flippant with the responsibility that comes with a CCW. But become a police officer that is ethical and virtuous, or a firefighter, right? Those are white blood cells in society. Everyone who acts in good faith and just wants to benefit their fellow man and acts in that kingdom of heaven mentality, that brotherhood, like those are the white blood cells. Those are the angels. Those are the children of God. And it's our job to be that resonance, to be that frequency, and to create new humans in that pattern, because that is the only thing that's ever going to matter. I don't give a damn if you're a black nationalist, a white nationalist, a communist. Actually, if you're a communist, don't replicate. You've already convinced yourself not to. I don't mean to change your mind. Go ahead and just take yourself out of the gene pool. But for those of all stripes, all colors, even all creeds, right? There are good Muslims out there. There's plenty of good Buddhists, right? I personally think that Christianity resonates more with the true religion, right? The objective, archetypal, spiritual force that the universe is asking us to believe in, right? And that's we can all basically ascribe to that perfect archetype, right? Which is the character of Jesus Christ. That's what it means to have love for Jesus Christ and have faith in Him. It's basically, so a lot of people, they make it very personal, and that's fine. That's where a lot of the deepest emotional power comes out of, is thinking in those terms. But you can also think of this, if you're a left brain dominant person like me, that's what it is. It's striving to be in resonance with the archetype of the perfect human. And I don't think that's irrational at all. I think that people who don't think that's rational are crazy. I think they're useless. I think they're weak. I think they're pathetic. And that's what I think of most socialists. Maybe my esteemed opponent on Sunday will be able to change my mind. And again, I welcome him and anyone to try to change my mind. I am not perfect, but I'm just on my way. Anyway, much love to you guys. I'm going to read an article, follow up here now, about the topic of Pride Month and why we should not be celebrating LGBTQ, PIA+++. We should be tolerant. I do agree with tolerance, but I do not believe we should be publicly accepting and celebrating this type of lifestyle, because it's far less innocuous than it appears, and it emerges from far darker satanic origins, whether or not the individual members will actually admit it themselves. Many of them will, and we'll get into that into the article.
So here's the article. Yes, childhood sexual abuse often does contribute to homosexuality. Not a fun article to read, but this is kind of the truth of the matter, and it's what we're going to be reading today. What do Anderson Cooper, Don Lemon, George Takei, and Milo Yiannopoulos have in common? They are all out and proud gay men, and they were all sexually abused as underage minors. Sadly, this is an extremely common occurrence, as there is frequently a connection between childhood sexual abuse and adult homosexuality. To say such a thing, of course, is to invite a hailstorm of fierce criticism and ridicule. You bigoted homophobe. These men were born gay, not made gay, and their sexuality is a gift from God, not the result of sexual abuse. Plus, there are plenty of gay men who were never abused, and plenty of straight men who were abused as boys and never turned gay. Putting the name-calling aside, there is some truth to these statements. Numbers don't lie. Not all gay men were molested as boys, since there are multiple causes for homosexuality, and not all boys who are molested turn out gay, probably because they were less predisposed towards homosexuality. Still, it cannot be denied that a disproportionately high number of gay men were abused as boys, and that certainly contributed to their sexual and emotional development. That's why it was no surprise when Dr. Robert Epstein, the pro-gay editor-in-chief of Psychology Today, noted that gay readers who were upset with an ad that ran in his publication in 2002 sent him letters asserting that gays have a right to be rude or abusive because they themselves have been abused. This obviously included being sexually abused. And that's why was no surprise when a 2009 report prepared for a bisexual health summit revealed that 74% of bisexuals had been sexually abused as children. 74%. For other studies focusing specifically on the connection between childhood sexual abuse and homosexuality, see here. There's a link. As for the notion that people are born gay, not only would that suggest that infants can relate to the concepts of sexual and romantic attraction, which they obviously cannot, but it would also ignore the fact that our upbringing and environment have a profound effect on us. Why deny such an obvious reality? It is well known that the children of alcoholics have a much higher chance of becoming alcoholics than the general population, and this cannot be blamed on genetics alone. As stated by the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, genes are not the only things children inherit from their parents. How parents act and how they treat each other and their children has an influence on children growing up in the family. These aspects of family life also affect the risk for alcoholism. In the same way, it is well known that men who were abused as children are much more likely than the average population to abuse other children as adults. As summarized in a 2001 article in the British Journal of Psychology, among 747 males, the risk of being a perpetrator was positively correlated with reported sexual abuse victim experiences. A high percentage of male subjects abused in childhood by a female relative became perpetrators. Having been a victim was a strong predictor of becoming a perpetrator, as was an index of parental loss in childhood. But again, none of this should surprise us in the least, since the environment in which we are raised, especially if coupled with major traumatic childhood experiences, has a profound effect on our ongoing mental and emotional and social development. Society ignores the childhood trauma of many gay adults. Yet when it comes to homosexuality, it is taboo to connect childhood sexual abuse with subsequent gay identity, since 1, this would contradict the born gay myth, and 2, it would underscore the fact that homosexual attractions are not natural and positive. As explained candidly by the lesbian feminist and academic Camille Paglia, every single gay person I know has some sort of drama going on back in childhood. Something was happening that we're not allowed to ask about anymore. She was speaking of bad relationships with parents as well as sexual abuse or other factors. In keeping with this, all the professional counselors I have spoken with, including trained pastors and psychologists or psychiatrists, have told me that the vast number of gays they have counseled were sexually abused as minors. Some told me this was the case in every instance they encountered. You might say, but gays hardly have a monopoly on this. What about the problem of heterosexual school teachers having sex with their students, especially female teachers with male students? But you miss the point, since 1, we all agree that this is terrible and abusive, and 2, most of us would agree that such relationships have the real potential of negatively affecting that child's sexual and emotional development. Yet when it comes to gay men who were molested as boys, we're told that this did not contribute to their homosexual development. More disturbingly, in gay circles, such relationships are often looked at as positive and nurturing, since it is surmised the boy was already aware of his same-sex attraction, and the older man served as a mentor of sorts. In their own words. In the words of Harry Hay, the gay icon and founder of the American gay movement, if the parents and friends of gays are truly friends of gays, they would know from their gay kids that the relationship with an older man is precisely what 13, 14, and 15-year-old kids need more than anything else in the world. You can be assured that such relationships would often become sexual, thereby providing the entry point into the larger homosexual lifestyle. Similarly, the renowned gay activist Larry Kramer opined, in those cases where children do have sex with their homosexual elders, I submit that often, very often, the child desires the activity and perhaps even solicits it, either because of a natural curiosity or because he or she is homosexual and innately knows it. And unlike girls or women forced into rape or traumatized, most gay men have warm memories of their earliest and early sexual encounters. When we share these stories with each other, they are invariably positive ones. That's why man-boy love has been celebrated in homosexual culture through the centuries. That's why there's a page listing historical pederastic couples on a gay Wikipedia site. And that's why George Takei could speak glowingly of his first sexual encounter at the age of 13 with a 19-year-old male camp counselor, at a time when he admits he didn't know he was gay. In this light, the outrageous statement by philosopher Michael Foucault arguing for lowering the age of consent doesn't sound as outrageous. It is quite difficult to lay down barriers, particularly since it could be that the child with his own sexuality may have desired the adult. Ah, yes, it was the child asking for it again. This is too sickening beyond words. The reality is that children, especially preteens and young teens, are tremendously impressionable and malleable, as confirmed by this account shared by a Christian family activist reflecting on his pre-Christian youth. Quote, "When I was about 14 or 15, I spent an afternoon smoking pot with a gay guy in his 20s who explained that young people during puberty have a very fluid sexual identity and how easy it had been for him to turn young teen boys into sex partners. A confirming study I later saw said 25% of young teens suffer same-sex confusion, but most grow out of it naturally by the end of adolescence." End quote. Ex-gay Robert Lopez, raised by his mother and a lesbian partner, had this to say, quote, "In a society soaked in porn, where sexual orientation is discussed openly in front of small children, there will certainly be 12 and 13-year-olds who think they want sex and think they are ready for it. When we discuss gay identity with 6th graders, which is very common, what are we discussing? We are talking about sexual acts. Perhaps people need to stand up and resist the human rights campaign's recent push to force such curricula on elementary and middle schools." End quote. It is truly distasteful to speak of such things, but speak about them we must, given the ever-increasing scope of gay activism, especially in our children's schools. And with the terribly painful issue of childhood sexual abuse coming to the fore in recent days, let's use this as a teachable moment. We can do this by 1. Being on the lookout for signs that our own children may have been abused, and 2. Refusing to allow our kids to be experimental pawns in the culture wars, because of which we strongly oppose sex-based LGBT curricula in the schools, and 3. No longer denying the common connection between childhood sexual abuse and adult homosexuality, thereby providing a path for healing and wholeness. By doing these things, we will not only make this a teachable moment, we will make it a redemptive one. And that's the end of the article. Basically, I'm not intending this to be a hate speech message, right? I'm not trying to hate anyone, but I do 100% believe that marriage is a sacred bond between a man and a woman. I think that a significant component of homosexuality in today's world and throughout history has been a result of early age childhood abuse and sexual abuse. And I think that we've now created a culture that is so perverse that it actually encourages the result of sexual abuse and celebrates it and tells people to be proud of the result of their trauma, of their warping and perversion. And again, I'm not ruling out that there are genetic gay people, or lesbian people or whatnot, but the amount that we're seeing in this culture today is completely unexplainable, right? We're going to have to start looking at what's going into our water supply, right? Birth control in the water supply, and the chemicals in food that are bending people's endocrine system and causing these effects. And we should never assume that would be a consequence-free environment, that we can just put hormones into our water supply and put hormones into our food and just poison everyone with chemicals, and that would have no effect. It does have an effect, and this is one of the effects, is the gender bending, gender dysphoria aspect of our culture today. So that's the article that I wanted to share with you guys. Cheers.
On that note, hope you guys are having a great week, and I'll see you on Sunday. Cheers.